Welcome back to Imagine Better, everybody. Your host, Mark Powers, and I am in studio today with the amazingly beautiful, superstar, awesome human, Rene Caruso. Episode 14.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. I think we're going to talk about eat, evolve, and inspire.
It's a good place to start.
That's kind of your thing, right?
Yeah, that is my thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What'd you think of your husband's episode last week?
Well, I haven't seen the full episode, but being here live in the studio to watch it, it was awesome.
It was awesome. So go out and subscribe, watch, share the heck out of that thing.
Yeah, very
Just
good.
launched today, everybody.
Yeah.
So here we are, and you were here last week behind the camera where your husband Michael is at today. Mm-hmm. So, wow, what a journey you've been on. I mean, bodybuilding, I've noticed. I never knew that about you. I did a little peekaboo just to say, what has Rene been doing? I mean, you were like a race warrior, or a road warrior on a bike. I mean, okay, walk me through this lively life of Rene.
Yeah, so I've done, I've always been pretty sporty.
Okay.
And I love this. I love this phraseology. I wouldn't say I was good, but I was very enthusiastic.
Okay.
So I've been volleyball, basketball, swimming, softball, all sorts of things.
Nice.
And bodybuilding was something that really spoke to me. I just enjoyed everything that went into the process of being able to shape and mold your body day to day, meal to meal. And we'll get back to what that ties into later on with regard to that.
Yeah, because I have questions
meal.
around that.
Yeah. And that was an obsessive journey for a good 6-8 years.
Okay.
And I was natural, so I didn't use any performance enhancing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, if people like that, but I wanted to see how far I could push my body. I loved the discipline of the sport.
Right.
Because so little of it is about what's in the gym.
Right.
It's about what you're doing outside of the gym, sleep and food.
Right.
Very, very important. But it requires meticulous documentation if you're going to make progress. And the last show that I got ready for was 5.5 months in preparation because I wanted to get down to 8% body fat. I got to 8.5. 5.5 months, rigorous, 9 meals a day, working out, sleeping. I mean, and it's just spreadsheets. And every week I would go visit with my nutritionalist and we'd tweak this and 9 grams here and 13 grams here.
Yeah.
And it was just, I loved it, but it was exhausting.
I bet.
And all I could think about was food all the time.
Well, I can only imagine. 5 months of not just eating what you want.
No, no birthday parties, no going to the movies, nothing.
My goodness. So there goes date night, Michael. You know. Were you guys dating back in those days?
Before Michael.
That was before Michael.
That was before Michael.
Okay. Well, good thing that's over.
And then when I finished, I did the last competition, and I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm not actually strong. I have very little functional strength. I'm tired all the time. Constant drops in energy and low blood sugar issues, and I woke up in pain. So I was able to move a lot of weight, but I didn't have good structure, stability, and it was just based on the training methods I was going through at the time. And I thought, my gosh, if I'm hurting this much now, what am I going to feel like 10 years from now?
You're right.
And I decided, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to do yoga. Well, I couldn't even get through a yoga class.
Oh my goodness.
Couldn't move, didn't have the stamina, didn't anything. And then that transitioned me into stuff like functional training, which eventually got me into obstacle course racing, which was just a whole nother.
Yeah, I saw you did that. That's impressive. I mean, there was once upon a time, 4 years ago, I was going to transform and go through the men's sport competition and through Gold's Gym, and I was working out there quite a bit. And I honestly, and I'm pretty disciplined, but not that disciplined, I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And I'd rather I work out just to stay in, that, the older we get, it's hard to stay in shape.
Yeah.
And I kind of let myself go here, so I'm getting back into it now, 10 pounds later, so now I got to, but it's hard. So, I mean, I would imagine through your journey, is it safe to assume this is kind of what transformed and transpired into what you do today? Because, I mean, going through that bodybuilding stuff and putting your body through that type of eating, and it's almost, I don't know if it's like, it's up, it's down, it's up and down when you're in and out of training, that does something to your body, I would imagine.
Oh, dramatically. Yeah, it has dramatic effects. But what I discovered through that, and it didn't start with bodybuilding, where it really started is, and it got me on this path of wellness, nutrition.
Right.
Really diving into what happens to our bodies with food, and not just food, but nutrients. Started when I was a teenager. I had an eating disorder. So I was anorexic and bulimic. It took me a couple decades to really get that under control, and thank God for my parents who realized this was beyond them and needed some professional help with that.
Right.
The downside at that time was they really didn't address the nutritional component. They're so focused on getting you to eat because of what's happening to the body, which makes sense, but they didn't address nutrition. So I still, while working through that, I didn't establish good eating habits.
Okay.
Right? It was food, just eat food.
Yeah.
And I started getting a more respect for food, but my days were filled with just, when am I going to eat? When am I not going to eat? What am I going to eat? What's it going to do to me?
Right.
You know, and it was obsessive. So I went through college, high school, and decided to go to culinary school. So I got in the cooking field. I went to culinary school, kind of like maybe an alcoholic owning a bar. But I wanted to have an understanding. There's so much ritual around food, which is one of the problems when I'm working with clients now, is how do we continue to enjoy food? How do we have celebration and not damage ourselves in the process?
Right.
Right? Because it's celebratory. And unlike alcohol or drugs, you don't need those to survive. You need food to survive. There's no way around that at this point in time.
Right.
So how do you manage everything that goes with that in a way that supports the way you want to look, feel, and go through life?
Okay. Okay.
And that's a bigger challenge.
Yeah.
So going to culinary school, minoring in nutrition, and then starting to look at, okay, how do I utilize this? And it was still a struggle because there's the old demons and the old habits that come up. That led me into bodybuilding. But bodybuilding was a different form of obsession around food.
I can imagine.
So while I thought I was healthy and I was in a better state physically on the outside, my inside was still a mess. Right? I had major gut issues. I had chronic hypoglycemia. I was eating every 2 hours. And it was just, again, every single day consumed with food. What am I eating? When am I eating it?
Right.
Even though I thought it was healthier.
Talk about anxiety, stress, and messing up the mind.
Yes.
Also. So, I mean, just a total train wreck, basically.
Basically, but you look good on the outside.
Yeah.
Right? You look good on the outside.
Right.
And I wanted to get away from that. I wanted to reach a point where food is no longer a nemesis. And again, that's a big part of what I do to help clients now.
Right.
Take that enemy away and welcome them back into life in a way that supports you. And it's complicated for a lot of people because there's a lot of things that trigger them. And what do you do? What is food? Everything is very confusing now.
Right.
Right.
And it's confusing, it's complex. I mean, I overall eat pretty darn healthy. Like, somebody opens up my refrigerator, and every time I have company over, they look at it, you think you're in a produce section. And I eat some, non-healthy foods, obviously pizzas and burgers. Like, we just had burgers last night, and it's in moderation, like they always say. But then if you start to eat healthy, I think the complexities for me is understanding food to the point where is it. And I don't know all the technical terms, you would, but something that starts with a G versus an L? I can't remember. But so I recently started this program called V-Shred.
Okay.
And I've been on it now for about a week. So it's brand new. And it's kind of a cool program, but then, I think it's all hype on the front end because the videos go like, oh, it gets you in there. And then it takes you 2 hours to get into the darn thing because he sells you on everything. But once you get in, you see the program, you see the foods. They really do a good job breaking it down, which is what I need.
Okay.
Because for me, eating food is, it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
but it's
I
also
hope so.
Yeah, but it's also I don't know what I'm doing when I'm eating other than enjoying it to build muscle, to build lean muscle. A lot of people, I think, and you tell me this as the expert, when we're burning, a lot of people do like cardio, for example, and they think they're burning fat when they're, and it's not, from what I understand, necessarily true. You're burning what? Which then...
It depends.
You know where I'm going with this?
I know exactly where you're going.
Okay.
But that gets back to the old calorie in, calorie out model.
Does it? Okay.
And that has pretty much been debunked. Now, if we look at something like bodybuilding, so bodybuilding, it used to be when I was competing that people did 1 or 2, maybe 3 contests a year. That was it, max.
Okay.
Because of what we had to do and how we ate to stoke the metabolism, to ramp it up so high. So, I mean, I'd be hungry for the next meal while I was still eating this one.
Oh, wow.
It was burning that high.
Wow.
And that's not good for the metabolism, but it can reach a desired outcome in a short period of time.
Okay.
But what we used to do is you do your contest and then you have a post-contest eating regime to get back to a normal metabolism. And that started shifting dramatically when people were competing year-round and you don't get your metabolism back and you basically wreck it. Right? So you become metabolically dysfunctional because of this constant putting wood on the fire.
Right.
So when you look at, so let's talk about 2 things. Congratulations for doing something to address that you want to lose a couple 10 pounds, you want to kind of repurpose what's going on with your body. One of the challenges most people face, and it hits women very differently than men, is that we have this ideal of how we're supposed to look. And there's many things working against us. Food supply is one part of it, and let's talk about what's nutrient, what's non-nutrient. Exercise, lack of sleep. You cannot out-exercise or out-diet lack of sleep, period. You can do all you want. If you're a teenager, you can get away with it for a while. But at some point, as we get older, lack of sleep is your foundation. So you cannot out-exercise it or out-diet it. Again, you then can't out-diet improper exercise, right? So calorie in, calorie out has pretty much been debunked. However, there are ways to utilize it in very specific forms, but it has to be tied to what's called macronutrient content, so that's your proteins, your fats, your building blocks, and your carbs. And what you need depends on what you're doing and what your age is.
Okay, makes sense.
As we get older, we can do very well with less complex carbohydrate. Especially women over the age of about 48, our hormones are shifting dramatically. There's a lot of mid, and postmenopausal stuff going on. Hormones get out of balance. Those tend to be things that keep our insulin in check. So because they're out of balance, our insulin rises. We start depositing fat in weird areas, and it's like, where did that come from? And why won't it go away? Oh, I better just eat a little bit better. And that's still not going to help it. It may help you feel better, but it's not going to move that if things like your hormones and your insulin, which is a hormone, is out of whack.
Interesting. I saw a really good visual. It was on a YouTube channel, because I was just doing some research on this topic, and somebody had like this bowl, this glass bowl, and they had these balls, like these little red balls. Those represented our organs. And then they put marshmallows in there, visceral fat, and how the visceral fat it's the most deadliest and toxic fat we carry, and everyone has it, it seems like.
We all do.
Yeah. And, I'm sure I definitely have a few extra pounds of that stuff. So, I mean, walk me through that process a little bit, because I think a lot of people don't understand the type of fat. There's this, what's that fat that's the skeletal fat? There's a name for it.
And you've got sub-Q. You've got adipose. Right. And then you've also got we have what we call, I believe, I want to make sure I say this right. Like what's in our face, we have a thin brown wafer fat. So a lot of people who are on Ozempic and things like that get what they call Ozempic face, because it tends to eliminate that fat or really take down those fat stores. So And here's another thing. They're skinny fat people, SOFIs.
Yeah.
Skinny on the outside, fat on the inside. Yeah. So it gets back to, what are you putting in your body?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I'm working with clients, we don't have a calorie content.
Okay.
In terms of total. What are your total calories for the day? That gets back to a diet mentality. I help people have a lifestyle mentality, because we travel extensively. We eat at conferences all the time, which by and large is not the best food, right? When you're at conferences. We eat a lot at airports. And the question is, what do I need to eat to feel the way I want to feel?
Right.
And do I make excuses because I'm at the airport or because I'm at a conference? Not that you can't eat things you like, but it's understanding, how do I put pieces together so it fits into the lifestyle that I have?
Right. That makes sense.
What's life without ice cream?
Yeah, I don't eat it.
But if you do eat it, it's the difference between having it every single day, multiple times a day, or having a balanced macronutrient profile, so that when you do eat it, you just have a little bit and you're sated. Yeah. That your body actually goes, wow, that was so good. And your body can use some of the nutrients, right? Yes. And if you're going to have ice cream, get the real stuff. Yeah. Don't buy the stuff that has 47 ingredients that your body cannot identify. Right?
That's almost like every food we have out there nowadays that's processed. It's really, when you think about it, you walk down any aisle in the grocery store, and if anyone actually took the time to read labels and understood, which they almost make these labels when the average person doesn't understand them, but what's really in there, and then these long science words of things. If a word is like, if it's beyond, like, I don't know, carrots, and it's this big, it's processed. I mean, it's probably a chemical.
Yeah, it's a chemical.
So it's interesting. And so when you start talking about, like, your eating lifestyle
plan,
and then you evolve, because I mean, I like how you go from eat to evolve to inspire. Kind of walk me through that, best as you can, through a process of, and maybe you use a client as a, you don't have to mention their name, but maybe as an example of someone that you sit down with, you start to understand their eating patterns. How do we get them back, on track with the program so that it becomes a lifestyle? And get rid of the complexities. What's the evolve look like? And then how do you continue to inspire, and how I would imagine they start to inspire people, because people start to see change in their physical appearance, their mental state of mind, right?
So when I'm working with a client, what I would normally do is we do an initial consultation. I send them a document that gives me a pretty detailed history. I want to know if there's any other medical conditions going on as well. I want to know if they're on medications. But in that document, I'm also asking them things about, are they able to eliminate every single day? Is it something that happens with ease? Do they feel empty? Where are they at in their life cycle with regard to hormones, male and female? Because that makes a difference.
Right.
What are some of your cravings? Do they have night sweats? Do they have excessive hunger, excessive this? What happens in the afternoons? It's a pretty detailed questionnaire. Then we meet, generally online or in person, depending on where they're located, because I worked with people overseas, so of course all of our stuff is online.
Yes.
And we will go through that, but while we're going through each section, I'm asking them other questions that give me a bigger piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Right? So if this is, and that has to fit into how their day is.
Right.
So I'm trying to put pieces of the puzzle together, and then I want to know, give me an average day. Give me an average week. I need to understand their lifestyle.
Right.
And then we start from there to look at, okay, is there an acute issue I need to deal with? So a current client that I'm working with, we're 6 sessions in, total of 7 weeks, 6 sessions in. She has lost almost 14 pounds.
Oh, wonderful.
And she's not dieting. And her goal, one of her goals is to lose weight. She's actually eating more than she's eaten in years.
Okay.
So that was another piece of it. And what she is eating is very different.
Yeah.
So we then detail, okay, what's the most acute issue you're dealing with right now? So let's say sleep is their biggest issue right now. I'm going to try and get some other factors put together, and then we're going to address how to look at better sleep hygiene to try and improve that. But then I'm also going to back up their day.
Okay.
So are they eating too close to bedtime? So instead of being able to fall asleep, their body temperature is high because they're busy digesting food.
Right.
Okay. So those are examples of things that would. So what meal do we want to focus on first?
That's a good idea.
I do not do meal plans at all.
Right.
Now, I work with clients who have UC, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, celiac, all sorts of digestive issues. But I don't give them a meal plan. I give them guidelines because it has to be individualized.
Yeah,
and it has to fit their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we'll figure out what meal to address first. So for this particular client, what we did is, and I hear this from people all the time, oh, I don't eat breakfast. Oh, I don't eat breakfast. Let me explain to you what happens when you wake up in the morning. So most people, if they haven't eaten a meal too close to bedtime, or if they've eaten a meal close to bedtime, let's go with if they haven't. They've been able to digest their food, so they wake up slightly dehydrated. They're often hungry, but because their insulin may be a little bit high, they're thinking they're not really hungry because they're kind of in a fasted state. People confuse intermittent fasting with time-restricted feeding and all the benefits of that. So, and the reason their blood sugar may be a little bit high is because they've digested everything, right?
Yeah.
So their liver has gone through gluconeogenesis and given them a little bit of sugar.
Okay.
Okay. But they don't eat because they're kind of in a little bit of, well, they're technically in a little bit of low blood sugar.
Okay. Makes sense.
They don't eat, and so what happens is they're still going down. Their energy is dipping. They'll have some coffee, they'll have a Red Bull, they'll have some other energy thing in the morning, but they're not going to eat their food. So now they've just set the tone for their energy for the day. Then they're going to eat their first meal, 11 or 12. Their insulin is going to skyrocket, and then they're going to crash in the afternoon.
Oh my goodness, I've been doing it all wrong.
One of the first, within a couple hours, you want to eat a proper balanced meal. Protein, fat, ideally some fermented foods, unless you've got an issue like mast cell.
Right.
And then some veggies, right? Like a typical breakfast for us this morning. We had eggs, uncured nitrite-free bacon that we love, half an avocado, and sauerkraut. So I had my good 35 grams of protein based on what I had in the morning, which is good for me.
That sounds good.
And I got great energy. But it's going to set the tone for the rest of my day, so I'm not ravenous. If you go from meal to meal and you're like, oh my God, I'm starving.
Yeah.
Your meal was probably unbalanced or it just wasn't enough for you.
Right.
Very common.
So it's interesting, and I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh my God, I've been pretty much doing this wrong for years. I've been doing intermittent fasting for a very long time. And usually I'll stop. I mean, there's times I go beyond this, but usually I won't eat past 7 p.m.
Well, you may not be doing it wrong. So
Okay.
tell me, why are you doing intermittent fasting?
I just thought it made, in the beginning when I started doing it, I noticed that and I've been doing this now maybe 8 years.
Okay.
So my body's just so used to it. However, lately I've been noticing a change, and I haven't really changed much. I think my body's just saying it's craving a different approach to that maybe. So what I do is, I don't eat past 7 most of the time. I usually don't eat until 6 hours until I wake up. If I feel a little hungry, I'll have a cup of coffee or two just to suppress that hunger.
Just black coffee? No MCT oil or anything?
No, just straight up high octane black coffee.
Okay.
And then, and again, I think lately, because I usually work out around 6:30 in the morning, and that's before I have anything. So my I'm working out on a complete total fasting.
Right.
No energy at that point, you know. And I've noticed, like, even as I'm sitting here right now, like, I do feel hungry, and I have had no energy lately, like none. So I know it's my nutrition, the way I'm eating. It has to be, because I'm pretty active and I'm pretty high-strung kind of individual.
You're pretty high energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But lately, like, I feel tired a lot lately. So yeah, I need to figure this out, and I was like, oh, I can't wait for this conversation today. I'm gonna get some tips and tricks.
Well, so not knowing all the details, let me give you some possibilities.
Okay.
So
listen up, everybody.
It could be that, especially with the working out, and I don't know the rest of what you're eating on this V-Shred, if you're getting enough of the proper macronutrients for the working out.
Okay.
When you wake up in the morning, you've gone a good 8 hours with no food.
Correct.
Right? So your body needs something. It's how you set the tone of your insulin for the day. Okay? So a big part of appetite control, muscle retention, all these things are affected by the hormone insulin. It's a very, very important piece. And ideally, you should be able to be rock steady, right? Regardless of what you're eating, you should be pretty much rock steady when you've got metabolic resilience or insulin, what's called insulin sensitivity. That means that your body responds very well. If I put a bunch of carbohydrates in, it's going to use them quick and go back to baseline.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
So now in the morning, I get up. I used to get up at 4:30. I don't do this anymore. I'm getting up about 6:30. But my coffee in the morning has, it's the combination of espresso. It's got a little bit of MCT oil in it.
Okay.
And which is a healthy fat that doesn't bump insulin out of whack.
Okay.
So when intermittent fasting, let's come back to that. Remind me to come back to that. What I'm looking at is insulin spiking, right? Glucose spiking, basically. So MCT oil isn't going to break that fast because it's not going to spike you, but it's going to give you a little more reserve energy and something to work on.
Okay.
If you're actually getting to a more ketogenic state, which is where your body can use ketones and start to utilize fat as an energy source more efficiently versus just burning carbs and bonking.
Gotcha. Wow.
Okay? So my
how complex this is?
But it's not, and that's what I help clients do. So we're going to take something that can be, oh my God, how do I know all this? You don't need to know all that.
So you
stuff.
simplify this for your clients.
Oh, big time.
Because I mean, I think about how complex it is out there, and I can only imagine people who really don't do any of this. Like they eat a lot, maybe they've gained weight, maybe they've been overweight for years, they can't lose the weight, or they don't know how, I should say, not can't in most cases, and it's nice to hear that you will listen to them, look at what their patterns are, and then give them a simplified approach to sustaining this new way of life.
Yes, and we generally do it one meal at a time.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
Going back to the client that I'm working with right now, when we started her morning, so she was eating. And she had major bouts of hypoglycemia, brain fog, fuzziness. She was eating cake and cookies every day because she was ravenous, had an uncontrollable sweet tooth. 2 weeks, all we did is we changed her breakfast. So she was eating breakfast, but what she was having for breakfast after coming off of sugar highs all night long and not sleeping because her body was so wired out from all the spiking that was going on with insulin and all the crap she was putting in. Her breakfast used to be oatmeal with sugar, oat milk, which is basically pasta water. Because we can't do dairy, right? Sensitivities, I can't do dairy. So let's see what that's like in a couple weeks. But oat milk it's sugar water. That's all it is. Then she would have yogurt with granola and fruit. So she basically had carbs, sugar, carbs, sugar, carbs, sugar. Yogurt's not a bad thing depending on the yogurt. But it's like, where's your protein? So we switched. So the first week, all we did was change her breakfast. And I said, tomorrow, like right now, go to the store today, and all we're going to work on this week is just your breakfast. And we moved it to eggs, avocado. She's got different types of breakfast meats. She does roast a lot of vegetables in the evening for their dinner. That was the one meal they were trying to make healthy. So she usually had roasted vegetables, and we got some fermented foods for her. The next week, she says, oh my gosh.
Wow.
I'm just surprised at what my energy's been like. So I said, okay, let's refine this. Just one more week. She was still having some afternoon dips. She was still having some of the cravings because we hadn't addressed any of the other meals yet. But her energy through the day was already a little bit better. So again, a second week. Let's see where we're at. Number one, she lost 4 pounds. After the second week. And she wasn't craving sugar. And that was just one meal that we worked on.
That's amazing.
So that became successful. Then we went after lunch.
Okay.
Okay. And that has been one of the biggest changes for her, because she does what a lot of people do. Oh, it's a low carb keto bread.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to get this low carb keto bread, and I'm going to slather some processed mayonnaise full of chemicals on it,
Right.
and I'm going to use a little bit of turkey meat and some other stuff, and have some keto chips.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But that's a typical, or I'm going to have a, not to demonize any brand, but I'm going to use one of those pure protein drinks that's loaded with sugar and gums and all this sort of stuff. And so we start transitioning those things out. And it's not that here's your meal plan, this is exactly what you're going to eat, because it never works.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. People go, oh, I'm on a diet. And just saying you're on a diet means there's a start and there's a stop. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to get back to how I want to eat.
Right.
Because you haven't reset what's going on in their body chemically, and you haven't been able to move out the crap that's driving cravings and hijacking the brain, which is food chemicals.
Right. So just
And then we
going
move
back
from
to
there.
the same old bad patterns and habits, and you just went from a week of doing this and now it's over and it's back to life again. And then that 4 pounds or 6 pounds or whatever individuals lose, it probably, I would imagine, comes back faster.
It usually
Now your body's
does.
storing that fat.
Yes, because often people have lost muscle.
Right.
Because on many of those plans, there isn't enough protein.
Okay.
So now you're also losing muscle, which is why when people tend to gain the weight back, number one, they feel they've been restricted, which they have been.
Right.
And then it bounces back and they feel fatter because they actually are, because they've lost muscle mass. So they've put the weight on in more and they're
Right.
bigger. Happens over and over and over.
My goodness, man.
But it's not that hard. And the big thing, I help clients uncomplicate the process and really work to, okay, how does this fit in your lifestyle? If you're somebody who eats out every single night,
Right.
and I get that a lot from people, oh, but I eat out. We eat out a lot. I got all these business dinners and stuff. So what?
Right.
I don't remember if it was Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn. Michael, you may have to tell me, who said, nothing goes in my mouth without my permission. Whatever you
that's
put in
great.
there is a choice.
Yes.
And it is a choice. And you look at, do I want something that builds me up or tears me down?
Right.
And that's it. Nutrient or non-nutrient. If what I put it in, my body can utilize it, convert it, and create energy so that it supports the way I want to look, live, and feel, or it has to exert energy to rid the toxic load and hopefully not cause as much damage on the way, which we already know it does.
Right. So when you now, do you only work with individuals or do you work with groups as well?
I work with groups as well.
Okay.
I've done a lot of speaking at groups to try and help them put things together. I've worked with a number of facilities, and I've worked with a number of clinics.
Nice.
So I can go in and help them put a program in.
On the medical side. Now, I think it was on your website I saw, it looked like you did have a group of people, and it looked like you were in a kitchen.
Yeah, I did cooking classes.
So you do the, okay.
Yep.
That looked kind of fun.
Yeah, I can do that too.
Nice.
And it helps people overcome, there's so many things in the grocery store that seem foreign to us. And let's go to the grocery store. Most of the real food is on the perimeter of the store.
Right.
Most of the nutritious food expires soon. It doesn't expire 2 years from now.
Correct.
Okay? So that's where, and while it may seem like it's a lot of work, if you don't want to wash lettuce and cut it, buy the bagged lettuce, right?
Yeah.
It's that simple. But if you buy the pre-made salad, look at what the ingredients are in there, because it's not the same thing.
Right.
And you just always have things in your fridge and in your pantry, again, that support, these are the foods that I need.
Yeah.
And you still got to look at the labels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will usually buy either I love spinach, and so I'll buy like a little thing of baby spinach, like those plastic, rip the top thing off.
Right.
Sometimes I'll buy the leaf spinach, set up, but I always have fresh vegetables, and so I find myself going to Nino's Salvaggio's or Randazzo's at least 3 days a week, because I'm not buying, like I used to when I do a big grocery shop. it's just I find myself when I do that, I buy foods that I really don't want to eat. 2, I end up throwing a lot of stuff away.
Yeah.
Because it just goes bad. So now I find myself, at least minimum twice a week, I'm going to the market and buying fresh.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that it's easier for me to kind of maintain the eating lifestyle that I want. And as you and Michael both know, though, my downside is I love wine. So I was like, I need to cut back because that's cutting into my whole...
You're drinking your carbs.
Oh my goodness, you're not kidding.
You're drinking your carbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's a balancing, right? So that's a balancing act. If we're going to go out and have wine and we're going to have something to eat, it's like, okay, so I know I'm going to drink some wine tonight.
Yes.
There's a carbohydrate load to that. And while it's technically non-nutrient, we can talk about polyphenols and all that, but basically it's a macro because of its caloric content.
Right.
But it's not really a nutritious food. So I'm going to have some extra wine. I'm eating more protein and I'm eating a lot of veg.
Right.
No croutons on the salad, no dressing on the salad, no bread at the table because I'm drinking my carbs.
Right.
That doesn't mean every single night, but it's about a trade-off and balance. And that's how you do it.
That makes sense.
That's how you start to just make those choices. You make the swaps.
Yeah. So I know we're probably bumping up against the time here. So, if you're looking for, I mean, who's your ideal customer? I mean, a good client. Like, is it an athletic person looking to bump up their nutrition and build lean muscle? Is it somebody? Or does it kind of go all over the place? Somebody who is maybe obese and they just struggled with food disorders and health issues. I mean, do you kind of cover all that, or do you have a certain niche that you focus on?
No, I can cover all of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the clients that I worked with, habit change is a big issue for
what is it called?
Habit change.
Oh, habit change. Yes.
Is a big issue. This was the client that I was working with overseas, actually.
Okay.
And she had been overweight off and on in her life, quite a bit. And substantially overweight. And she had fat clothes and she had less fat clothes. That's also another habit thing, right? It's well, I know I'm not going to be able to maintain this, so I always hang on to my fat clothes, right? That's another trigger warning. And it's a constant reminder when you go in your closet, there's my fat clothes. How long before I can't get in these and need to get in these? Right? It's another thing I try to help people work through. So we get rid of the fat clothes.
Right.
Because it becomes a maintainable lifestyle.
Right.
But one of her triggers is she would drive home, and she was a stress eater, but she would drive home the same way every single night. And there was a place that she loved their milkshakes. And she got to the point where she's, hiding this from her husband, right? So that's it. That's another sign that there's something else going on here. I am not a psychologist, but I understand triggers, and I can help you maneuver around those. The trigger would be, I'm going home. The anxiety would start from when she left the office because she knew she's going home, and as she got closer to the place, all that was in her mind is, am I getting it, am I not getting it? No, today's not the day. Not doing it. And then she sees herself turning the wheel.
Right.
And then she's got to scarf it down, and then she's got to find a place to dispose of the evidence.
Yes, yeah.
And then feel like crap all night long because she let herself down again.
Right.
So one of the simple things we did is, after working with her, we were about 3, maybe 4 weeks in when she shared this with me. Okay. This dirty little secret that she's keeping in. And I said, out of curiosity, is there another route you could take home that doesn't add a lot of time?
Right.
And she said, yeah. And I said, so it can't inconvenience you. Is it a route that you could take without inconveniencing you? So the first day she did that, I get a message from her, and she said, oh my God. There was no stress related to it at all. It didn't mean she didn't think about wanting it, but we removed a trigger that was a start of rebuilding her confidence in herself, that she didn't lack the willpower. We needed to take something out that was creating a trigger and the response.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That she wasn't able to control. And as a result of working with her, within a year, she was able to get off. She was a early diagnosed type 2 diabetic. She was able to get off of her insulin. She saw her father have health issues. She still has some weight,
Right.
but she eats better, right? And she's not on insulin, so she's still working on that piece.
Right.
So it depends where the client's at, and helping people figure out their gut distress and balancing their microbiome and creating a realistic eating plan that will support them moving forward.
And that's the thing.
Yeah, and I'll throw something else in there because longevity is a real passion of mine. I'm a biohacker. I use peptides
I saw that,
and
yeah.
bioregulators and all sorts of stuff. I've had my telomere length tested and all sorts of things like this. I forgot where I was going to go with that.
Biohacker.
Biohacker. And we'll come back to it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry about that.
Nope, it's all good.
But
I do that all the time.
I totally forgot where I was going to go with that. So
We cover all of those things, and
yeah.
so no worries. I mean, what an impressive background, though, and to have you and Michael, on my show, as my friends and my guests. I love this. I'm so grateful, and I'm learning every week from every guest that's on here. And today, like I said, I was really excited because this is a real struggle that I've been dealing with, and for a while, is to try to figure out. How can I, well, one, I want to educate myself on the proper way of eating, I guess. Mm-hmm. And, in this intermittent fasting thing I've been on.
The proper way for you.
Correct. For
you.
me.
For
yeah.
You. Yeah.
And I guess that's understanding body type and understanding what my body needs in order to achieve the goals that I'm trying to achieve, I guess.
And you don't have to get a degree to do that.
No.
So that's another thing about what shifted in this industry that I find annoying, I guess, deceptive. The food is deceptive enough, and the marketing strategies, and people think they're reading labels, and they actually don't even understand the deception in the labels they're reading. You don't need to go into a deep study if that's something that you want to do. We start by making small changes.
That I like.
Small swaps. You start looking at the seed oils that are in your pantry, and when one runs out, you get something else that's a better alternative, right? Lateral moves. Right? How do we start getting rid of the stuff that doesn't support us and bring in items that better support us without making it a job, without counting calories. However, it does help to get to a point where you're like counting your macros to make sure you're getting enough protein.
Right.
It's very, very important, especially as we get older. Our muscle mass, our muscle density, our strength is very, very important as we get older.
Yeah. I know for myself in the last year, I've reduced size. I always say 50%, I don't know. But I used to be much broader, bigger arms, even a year ago. But I worked out a lot too. I mean, I still work out, but not like I was. Mm-hmm. And, it's just, I'm noticing now I just don't want to gain a lot of size. It's more about lean mass, healthy energy. And for me, that's kind of like what I'm striving for right now, But, well, tell people, how can they find you? You have your website, your social channels. You tell them how can we find you and get a hold of you to help us break our bad eating habits and our bad exercising habits. And
well, thanks to my brilliant marketing husband, I have you can find me anywhere from Facebook. I have a private Facebook group called Eat, Evolve, Inspire. You can find me as Rene Caruso on Facebook and message me directly. My website is eatevolveinspire.com. And you can set up complimentary consultations right through there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as @rene.caruso. So I'm there. And if you're struggling, reach out. Don't struggle. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. And it's, take the time to invest in yourself. And just one last thing. I know it sounds a lot harder probably than what it really is because of the complexities and the confusion that this market has on food and exercise and the word diet. I can't stand that. Never liked that word.
Yeah. And
everyone talks about, I'm going to go on this diet or I'm going to do this 7-day cleanse. It's so much more and it needs to be sustainable, and that's where you come into play, and that's why I'm so excited for everyone who's going to watch this and learn. I learned today, and I'm hoping that whoever watches this will reach out if they're struggling in these areas and try to figure out a way that they can live a nice, natural, healthy lifestyle, a sustainable, but not. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. So thank you.
It doesn't. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Episode 14.
Episode 14.
We're growing. I'm just moving along, guys.
Glad to be here.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Your uber awesome wisdom and guidance, and thank you.
Thank you.
And you brought the big guy back here. He's been on his phone.
The big guns.
Yeah. Everybody, you have a great day. Thank you for joining me and my lovely friend and guest, Rene Caruso. Episode 14 of Imagine Better. Remember, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that notification so you don't miss out on other amazing episodes like this one. Share our content so we can grow communities across the nation and help people that truly need guidance and resources like Rene here to help them get through the challenges that they face, especially in this complex world of food and the lack of sleep and everything else that goes along with it. Guys, have a great day. Thank you very much.